Okay, I'd like to welcome Professor Libby Ruffhead, who's the winner of this year's Health Services Research Association of Australia and New Zealand Distinguished Researcher Award winner. But before I hand over the trophy to Libby, I'd like to ask her a few questions to see if we can learn something about how to conduct impactful health services research. So maybe we'll start with asking you about perhaps your most famous research programme, which is the Veterans Medicines Advice and Therapeutics Education Services, MATES programme. Sorry to check the name of that. And just ask you how that programme originated and how it's evolved over time.
That project was a response to a tender, but the tender called for a prescriber intervention and feedback program, so a tender for GPs. And Andy Gilbert and I, who led that tender, we had both been practicing pharmacists, but we also had interdisciplinary qualifications. Mine's in health promotion and Andy's is in behavioural psychology. So we said to the government, in order to improve medicine use, you have to involve all the other stakeholders. You need a veteran reference group. You need veterans as the target group. You need other health professionals involved. And you need it grounded in behavioural theory and health promotion. And that was a bit of a surprise to the government, but we were pretty lucky that they thought that they'd give it a try. Particularly the reference groups they're a bit nervous about, and we got funding initially for one reference group, and 14 years later our reference groups have been meeting twice a year every year since then.
Wow. Yes. Well, thanks for that. The more generally, what would you say would be your greatest area of impact in terms of your research program over the years?
I'd like to say that it is improving health of veterans, because that's what Veterans Mates aims to do. And one of the things that we do in that project is not only does it have its health promotion focus, but it's it has a data-driven analytics focus. And I think two things probably have made a difference and helped translate that work. One is we've been very clear in working with data that we've always wanted to produce results that are understandable by policymakers and veterans. So quantifying things down to real numbers. We've kept 20 veterans out of hospital. But the other thing I think that has helped us enormously is having those reference groups all the way along. So we have had engagement with every player all the way along. And so taking the results back to government, and we do that with Veterans Mates at least 4 times a year. We do it with our veterans twice a year. We go to government and explain what it means. I think that has meant that government have been confident to pick things up, to realise what's possible to do, particularly with their data. I think that's been a great development of what more we can do with data, and particularly in the medication safety space, that simple thing of quantifying, that we think there are 230,000 hospital admissions a year for that are medication related. That's meant that the Australian Commission on Safety and Quality in Healthcare and the Australian Digital Health Agency can pick up that and say, this is a problem that we can fix. And they've made it their goals. Mm.
Now, obviously the MATES programme is has been very impactful, but I just wondered whether there are any examples of research that you've undertaken that perhaps didn't have the impact that you felt that it should have had.
I think when you don't engage with the end user well enough, that's where things fall down, or that's where things don't continue. So I think that projects where we've just submitted reports and not done the face-to-face talking work have been less successful. I think to go and educate the end user, the person who will pick this up, is a critical element to make things successful. And of course, having them all the way along, actually, there at the start, there at the beginning, and to keep them in the loop. I think that's the critical thing that is sometimes forgotten and sometimes neglected. Yeah, but at the end of the day, it's probably the most important thing you can do. Have who this work will affect with you all the way.
Yeah. Did you try and involve stakeholders in the process, or did some other thing?
Yeah, so I think that interesting question of how do you get this work to be a priority for, because people are busy, so how do you get this work to be a priority for the end user? And I can only I was just thinking, when you're interstate, you've got to travel, and I think if you live in town with people, go and organise meetings every time, because it might not be a priority until people can see its value. And I think if you start the wrong way and just submit reports, then the value might not be seen, and then time isn't made. But if you start early well, then the benefits can be seen, and the work becomes a priority.
So have you got any advice on what early career researchers can do to kind of start that process of engagement with stakeholders?
Oh, look, I would say get involved with stakeholders, whatever you can, be they clinicians, be they organisations, be they governments. Nominate for committees if you can, and trust your mentors. Sometimes I see mentors giving opportunities for early career researchers, and you never feel ready. As an early career, you don't feel good enough, you don't feel able, you don't think you've got the skill because it's a national committee or it's something really important. And I think if your mentors have identified that they think you're ready, trust them and grab it.
Yeah. Not all early career researchers will have mentors who are maybe supporting that process, so...
Absolutely, and the other group not to forget is patient groups. There's lots of patient groups who want help, or consumer groups that want help, that want their side of the story to be understood, and health service researchers are in a great space to do that work.
Yeah. The last question I'll ask before handing over the trophy is for the association's AFL fans who may not know about your equally famous nephews. I'm just wondering what Jared and Jordan think about your research achievements.
No, I think I know more about their footy than they know about my research.
Well, maybe they'll know a bit more after this video becomes viral.
Thanks, John.
Okay, nice award.
Thank you.
Yeah.